I know, I'm always...
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the Douglas School Committee to order on April 3rd at 6:30 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to read the Douglas Public Schools mission statement. The Douglas Public Schools offer a diverse learning experience that meet the academic, social, and emotional and physical needs of all of our students. We provide a safe and supportive and challenged learning environment in which students may achieve academic success and personal growth. Decisions are made in the best interest of our students. I'd like to call up our student representatives, Emily Ransdale and Adeline Cherrier from the high school.
Hello and good evening. March has been an eventful month for Douglas High School. Advisory has continued to help students prepare for college and their following years of high school. As we wrap up our third semester and begin our final semester of this academic year, students are preparing for their classes next year. Seniors will be wrapping up their high school careers with their exams and preparing for graduation.
For clubs, Drama Club is having their performance on April 26th at 7 p.m. On Saturday this week, Tiger Jam will be performing with songs performed by students and teachers throughout all Douglas schools. Along with Tiger Jam, students are also looking forward to the Junior-Senior Prom, which is being held at Crystal Lake Golf Club on Friday, April 12th. Student Council also took their trip to Hyannis during March, where they participated in various conferences and workshops to gain various leadership skills and experiences.
Furthermore, DECA is now going to internationals, which is a huge accomplishment within the high school. 4 seniors will be attending this conference and will gain a multitude of skills and experiences from this event.
In sports, students have been preparing the field at Soldiers Field for the season. A senior project has also been incorporated into sports, where an alumni basketball game was held for past basketball players in Douglas to meet the current players. Overall, spring sport have been well in action, especially with outdoor track beginning its season.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Is anyone going to the prom?
Yes, I am.
Are you excited?
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be a good time. So. All right. Thank you so much for coming in this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody here for public comment? Seeing as there is none, we'll go over, is there any old business we need to discuss?
There is not.
Moving on to new business and opening it up for public hearing for the FY 2025 budget, please.
You need to do a roll call vote to open and enter into public hearing.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Roll call vote to open it up for public hearing.
Beth Bergstrom, present.
Monique Selvas, present.
Teresa Brooks, present.
Meg Rodson, present.
Heather Moran, present.
All right, thank you so much. So we're here to present our proposed budget for our public hearing today. Before we dive into it, I just want to say how proud I am of what we're about to present to the committee and the community. It's been a long time here in Douglas that we've presented a real needs budget, that we haven't had to make significant cuts, that we haven't been holding off until July, August, September to roll things in. So this is good for our students, it's good for our staff, it's good for our families. A big thank you to Ms. Keegan for her work in putting this together and doing the planning. Those of us who've been watching the news and have friends and families in nearby communities across the Commonwealth, we're hearing about budget cuts, we're hearing about layoffs, we're hearing about overrides. And I think a result of some good, being prudently conservative planning on Ms. Keegan's part kept us in a good spot for this going forward. Also a big thank you to our leadership team, and our teachers and our faculty and staff. You hear a lot around mental health and what's been going on with mental health in schools, and a lot of kids not being able to be serviced in schools as a result of it. We've done a concerted effort to put some emphasis on mental health, keeping our kids in school, which is good for a whole host of reasons. So, as I said, I'm proud of this budget. I'm proud for the work that we've all done collaboratively to make this a reality and for what it represents for our students, our staff, and our community. As we always do, the start is a copy of our mission statement, which we just read. The goal, as it always has been so far this year, is to provide a realistically real needs budget for FY25 fiscal school year. Our budget, did I say that right? Yep. Our budget drivers, here's what we've been able to do in FY25. And again, this is a copy of what we've seen earlier this year. The addition of a guidance counselor, adjustment counselor at the middle school, that position, Mr. O'Brien has interviewed and hired someone. They start the Monday after break. So, some real good experience. We're really excited to have her join our team. Bob said will fit in nicely and complement us well in the office, so we're excited for that. A Stars and Stripes program teacher at the high school. The ability to bring a STEM teacher for the primary school and the elementary school does a lot of things. Having us have that 5-day rotation, having us have 5 specials, allows some great things to happen for preschool there, but also to get kids excited about science, technology, engineering, and math. The grounds and maintenance custodian, the 1.0 FTE, again, as we said, we have almost 40 acres of space, and we have a part-time grounds person. An athletic trainer, the continuation of Panorama, remediation paras, which were in the budget as a result of ESSER grants, but we can continue with those remediation paras to provide that Tier 2 support for students. Textbooks, elementary, middle, high school, Chromebook leases, and then district-wide wage adjustments.
And the Panorama grant, the Panorama program was also paid for by a grant previously. We were able to incorporate that in the budget. And that's really up and running, and
We just had our kickoff meeting last week for Panorama, so we signed the contract sometime in October. Took them 4 months to do the back-end work, to download all the information. So we had an introductory meeting last week, and we have some professional development training with them coming up next week.
What is the athletic trainer going to be for, are you going to talk about more about what they're going to do? Are they going to be for high school and middle school?
We're going to have them do high school, middle school. We have to see who we can hire.
Gotcha.
And I think that's going to be a challenge potentially to find someone. But we want to keep our student athletes safe. It's something that the athletic department has been asking for years. It's a good thing to have for our student athletes. That person will fluctuate between the middle school and the high school on the sports. Rob, do you know anything about how you're going to set that up if we're successful in finding someone?
I want to make sure I have an athletic director in place first.
Correct, so, correct, too. So, there's a lot of things, but the plan
So
is,
it's in addition to the athletic?
it's in addition to the athletic director, correct.
And actually, I was just going to make one comment with regard to that, too, is that when we did present the update in March, I did state that we had some additional reductions, but to be honest with you, with the way things have been kind of busy, I didn't realize that that was kind of put out there, so we added that back in. We have had that, try to get that into the budget, and keep it in the budget for years.
It's been at
So-
least a decade that's
Yeah.
been there.
Right.
So that's huge.
Yes, absolutely.
If you can get a
Absolutely.
good athletic trainer in, it's so much more than just taping the kids up. It's helping them with it, kids who are injured, working off those injuries, kids coming back from practice, how to appropriately warm up, warm down, cool off. They do a whole lot more than just standard games, waiting to see if someone gets hurt, or taping kids up before and after. So it's a good addition to the program, if we can find the person.
And it teaches people overall good health.
Teaches people.
I was going to say, it is a lifelong, it is
Yeah.
lifelong learning for probably the rest of your life on how to handle, how you do things, so.
Again, they're invaluable when you can get a good one. How are we able to do a lot of this? We had some savings, as we said, reduction of 3 paras and ABAs through attrition. We were lucky with our heating oil bid price reduction, reduction of district-wide sped tuitions, and some staff reductions, which brought us... Retirements, sorry, what did I say? Reductions, sorry, retirements to the tune of $721,731. So that was some of the drivers to help us get to this point. You've seen this next chart a few times. I'll have Ms. Keegan go over the numbers, but again, just want to thank the town for their contribution. Originally, we were at about $330,000, and through some continued discussions with the town, we were able to increase that. So we're thankful for the town and their support of the schools. When I go over my goals, we'll talk a little bit more about some other things they've done for the school department, which I'm really pleased, and just talking about how our relationship's growing and improving as we go on, and they continue to support the school. So, Courtney, I know you want to talk a little bit about this.
So the first, as far as the first numbers, the FY24 general fund appropriation, $14,918,771, hasn't changed, of course. The additional FY25 town preliminary additional appropriation amount of $425,081, and again, that's far more than what we typically get, coming down to a final appropriation number of $15,343,852. So that's where we were before. So you'll see a slight change, a slight reduction in the proposed preliminary budget. I know it's just a little bit, but again, we had made most of the reductions before we brought the initial to you before. The thing that we were looking at is trying to see a little bit more time go by to see where we saw all of our revolving funds, particularly school choice is really the biggest one, and circuit breaker. So as you can see, there is a large amount that we're using for offsets. In February, we presented to you $2,863,449,000 in offsets. Now it's $3,080,077, and the change there is all school choice. So more time has gone by. I've done an analysis of various things. I kind of have to look at a broader picture, too, of other funds, too, just to kind of look at the whole lay of the land. So our FY25 general, preliminary general fund budget, net of offsets, is matching the appropriation, so we're on budget, $15,343,852. You see there's no budget delta left there anymore, and that is a percentage increase over the FY24 appropriation of 2.85%. And again, I can't reiterate enough what we've said before. We are all very pleased with where we are at this juncture. I mean, I was driving here this evening thinking about the meeting that I had every year, this particular night when we had the public hearing, and always having to talk about we had to take we couldn't incorporate any technology. I'm sorry, everyone, but we had to take all the textbooks out of the budget. We'll see what happens at the end of the year. It's all in there. And I think we do appreciate all of the reductions that they did offer up, but they weren't things that impacted our programs in moving forward. So we are very, very happy with that. Now, does that mean that it's easy, or that, there's plenty there, or there's no, that's not the case. But for the first time, we are very pleased with where we are, but we do still have to watch over things, and be very, very careful going forward. And while I'm saying that, I probably will do an update to the budget, just to move things around. Obviously, it would have to be within the appropriation, before we hit July 1st, just so we're starting off really, really clean, but very pleased.
And this is what's great about Courtney. We talked about how awesome things are, and then she ended with, but we still have to be prudently conservative through the end of the year, which is accurate. She keeps us
We want
grounded.
to make sure that people
Correct.
Understand that.
People understand,
Right.
correct.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that. The next two slides I'll turn over to Courtney is just an update on where we are with school choice and circuit breaker.
Yeah, two largest offsets. So if you look at the FY25 projection, so of course, we have three columns of projections here. We're projecting through the end of FY24, we're projecting the entire year of 25, and then giving a very preliminary on 26, just so you can see the potential carryover into the following year after we end this year's budget. So in FY24, the actual expenditures I'm expecting to be around $1.5 million. And as far as the reclasses from general fund, and looking at the budget where we are right now, projecting $500,000. And again, a lot of that is due to the special ed, is really most of it. So we have a projected carryover balance of $1.8 million. And as you can see, I am being, which I have to be, prudently conservative on the revenues expected. It's very hard with the special ed increment, because things can change. But I did, when I looked at 25, I did, of course, take off all the 12th graders. And I looked at a history trend of how many new students we typically have coming in. I added those in, and then I'm being conservative on the sped increment. So, and then conservative as well on potential reclass, because we're talking about well over a year from now. So at least you can see going forward, I mean, you see a lower number going into FY26, but again, I'm being conservative. So I do expect that will be higher, because otherwise I wouldn't be proposing it to you, So, does anyone have any questions on school choice? You have any questions, Beth?
I'm thinking about how to ask my question.
Okay.
But more or less, so our school choice, and this is not the right words, but
Yeah,
it's
go
kind
ahead,
of our
yeah.
rainy day fund. It's, we use that to help with our operating budget, but it's, we also have, this is the money that if the building, the roof breaks or something, like,
Don't put that in the
Whoa.
universe.
no, I'm not, I'm
No,
just,
we wouldn't, yeah.
but
I know what you're
Correct.
saying.
in my mom
Yeah.
head, this would be my savings account. That's not what it is in a district. But for somebody that's watching that doesn't understand the municipal stuff.
Yeah, so it's not really a savings account.
I know that's
so-
not the right
Oh, no,
word.
no, but so
But-
let me explain what school choice is. Okay, so what it is tuition that we get in $5,000 for each student we have, for the amount of time that they're here for the year, for each student that we have in the district. So it's not the same in every district, but here, in large part, in order to even have our operating budget, if we didn't have this, we would be in big trouble financially, okay? But that being said, to your point about the other part of it, yes, I have to be prudently conservative, and I think that's what you're leading to.
Yes.
That with the figures, because, and this is what I was explaining on the town side as well, is because if we have more repairs than we could possibly imagine could happen, this is where we go, because we can't go to the town.
And this
You
is,
know.
and I hear you talk a lot about, we don't build up a war chest of money.
Exactly.
And so this is the same account. So in other words, we don't have bags of cash in a closet somewhere, like.
We do not.
Yeah,
No,
That's,
no,
but
no, no.
I knew I was gonna
No, I'm
say
glad,
something a
I'm
little
glad
bit off of
I'm glad
how-
you brought that up, because it does come up a lot with regard to that, and especially at certain, when
Right.
we go on the town side, so they see a balance, but they're not understanding that we have to look prospectively, because we rely so heavily, as you can see with these numbers, on, when we're preparing our budget. We can't know in advance, a year and a half ahead of time, what's gonna happen
Right.
throughout the whole next year.
Right.
But, as best as we can garner. So I can't, just offer up everything that's in there and then say, well, just let's hope and pray
That
that we
nothing
still
happens.
have that,
Right.
and nothing happened, but we still have that. Otherwise, our FY '26 budget would be, and it's all because we rely so heavily on it.
No, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's a healthy balance of using it where we need to use it for the students and what we absolutely have to, but also not just going, woohoo, we have cash, let's go to town.
Yeah, because then we would have problems in the subsequent year's budget. We would have huge financial issues.
No.
So, yes.
you.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, yeah. And the next one is, I'm sorry, does anyone else have any questions on school choice? Okay. Circuit breaker, nothing's been changed with that, as far as what I presented in February. So if you look at your budget, budget document, I did present to you the budget document, the detailed budget. So, of course, of all of the district-wide and then all of the 4 school buildings in detail. And on the last page, page 24 of 24 of the budget document, we do talk about the largest ones as far as offsets, which is school choice, the $1,416,728, and also the $982,000 in circuit breaker. But as you can see, we also utilize other funds that we do have available to us, and we are offsetting the overall operating budget, $209,343 in preschool, facilities rental, $15,000, the middle school athletic program revolving fund, and that's the program fees, $20,000. The high school athletic program fees, $85,000. We have the special education, what we call the 240 grant, $280,000. Title I, $61,634. And then the special education early childhood grant in the amount of $10,472. So I just want everyone to know, we look at all of these various funding sources that we have to offset our gross operating budget. And again, the total for all of these revolving funds and grants, and sometimes we also have donations, this year we don't, is $3,080,077 to offset our gross operating budget. And that's what helps us come down to the town's appropriation amount. So just wanted to point that out as well. Does anyone have any questions about anything that I've said so far? So the only other part of the budget that we do have, as we know, is the transportation budget, and I do apologize, I meant to do a slide on that, and I forgot. But we have the transportation budget in the amount of $1,932,147, and that's actually down 3.93% from FY '24. And this includes, well, bless you. Thank you. This includes both regular ed transportation and special education transportation for both in-district, out-of-district, and also summer school. And it actually went down a little bit, so, from the prior year.
That's pretty good right now.
Yeah, knock on wood. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions at all regarding the budget? So again, the only change that we've had is a little bit less in the gross operating budget amount and larger utilization of the school choice account.
Sorry, what is this on the sped transportation line? It talks about summer school, but then it says plus vocational, and then it looks like that, is that 32,000 associated with the vocational? What does that mean?
Oh, you asking about the vocational, what it is, or?
Yeah, I guess why,
Yeah.
what, does that have to do with the high school and vocational? What does that have to do?
Special education, so
Oh.
he can, yeah. Mr.
On
Rosenthal
cue.
will be happy to address that. Good question, thank you.
As we're looking to develop our programs and really provide students with education and career readiness, part of the vocational piece is getting off grounds and providing transportation for that. So that's part of the budget, and once we have a dedicated work site and a schedule set, it'll be a weekly occurrence.
Once a week?
Planned. Looking potentially to see, depending on work site availability, multiple times a week, where there's also potential for community trips, such as going to the grocery store, daily living skills, and that sort of thing. So that's what this section of the budget is.
Got it, okay.
That's critical.
Yep.
That's their curriculum. That's their curriculum.
Right, but it's critical to grow,
Exactly.
right? And so I'm glad to see that we're being focused on that, because for a couple of years, it's been missing, and so I'm pleased that we're trying to make it a more robust program.
Absolutely, absolutely. Does anyone have any other questions?
I was just looking here to see
Uh-huh.
the STEM budget. Is that, I'm looking in total instructional supplies.
What page?
Yeah, what
This
page?
is on page 21.
Oh, okay.
Would it fall somewhere in here, like supplies for STEM programming?
With the consumables.
Oh, are you wondering if there is, if there was?
There's a budget for STEM, right? In the
Oh,
middle
there is,
school
that
programming?
was for .5 FTE teacher in each the primary school
Right.
and in the elementary
So
school.
for the teacher, but what about supplies for building
Page
things and
21 is
creating
the high
things?
school.
and-
Yeah, no, but I mean, the principals would have to.
What line item are you on?
Consumable stuff.
I think she's asking if
Yeah,
there, are you asking
consumables.
if there are supplies budgeted for?
Do we have a budget for
Oh,
supplies for
that would be for the
STEM?
principals too.
Rob, what do you have for,
Oh, no, that would be, I think, you're talking about elementary and primary?
no, she's on
The
page
new one?
21, which is the high school.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just looking to see where can I find like what we're budgeting for STEM?
So it's done, it's done by building?
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So
done by
you would have to-
building,
You would
yeah.
have to look in each of the buildings' line items, but we can have the principals come
Okay,
up and talk
So
about.
for instance, I'm looking at the high school budget, so how would I know what we're spending for STEM programs that we're so excited to be putting into our school district, so.
Okay, so under the high school budgetary item, STEM covers science, technology, engineering, mathematics, STEAM also incorporates art. So if you look at, if you're on page 21,
Yep,
and you go down to science supplies.
Okay.
To start, you'll see that we're budgeted at 2625 for next year. A lot of our science supplies usually come out of the chemistry class as we revolve chemicals out that, shouldn't be there anymore. If they surpass their usefulness, expired for any reason or anything like that. We also have, we're working through a grant right now to kind of push our supplies up for next year as it is. So, and that's not actually illustrated in next year's budget per se.
So this is a budget that's shared amongst the whole science department, though,
Correct.
per year? Okay.
Correct. So that number is shared across to the science department. We have, of the science classes we offer, biology's, again, going to be one of our bubble classes next year. So biology will have some additional supplies that they're going to need next year. Chemistry, we actually did a chemical audit back in September, October timeframe to see what we had. We're in fairly good shape there. So we're going to kind of move, see which department, which class kind of needs it more. The manufacturing, physics, engineering piece is getting a lot of their supplies now for next year through that grant process.
The pathways, is that what the?
Yes.
So they have their own bucket of funds that they get supplies from?
So not typically.
Okay.
I'll say that, not typically, but because we were approved for that grant, we do want to use it in order to make sure that we are well set to improve our manufacturing programs.
Is it a goal for us to grow this? This doesn't seem like a lot to cover all of the science departments, like all the possible science that we could possibly do.
So the way that the, as far as the budget process goes, generally speaking, is the principals will send to all of the teachers, in each of the content areas, and ask them, what it is that they need, because they know what what they need, and also what they have already. And those are sent up to the principal. Now, I know for the primary and elementary, this is a new program coming in, and I do know that Cindy has already been working on some stuff, because you've come here and you've presented some things, but I know you have some things already. I'm not sure about the elementary school.
So what I want to mention is that if you look at on page 11, the instructional supplies, there's a $6,000 increase there. And so it goes from 28 to 34 to about. So I have to, we would definitely factor in some of that going to the STEM instruction.
Okay.
And that would be that, it would be a fraction of that, I would imagine, would be, what would be actually ultimately needed by the SPED teacher.
The supply,
STEM.
the supplies are built
STEM,
off of
sorry.
teacher requests.
Okay.
So what happens is, let's take the math department, just to be easy. Rob will send something out to the math department. What do you need for FY '25 within reason? And they'll say, you know what, this year we need extra calculators, we need more graphing paper, we're low on this, we're high on that. So one year you might jump up to $5,000. The next year they might say, you know what, we're in pretty good shape, we just need batteries for our calculators, it might be $150. So it fluctuates from year to year. So this is based off of what the staff put in for. Again, they also know there isn't this, as you said, barrels of money hiding, so they can ask for a whole bunch of stuff, but they ask for what they need to run their programs.
And another thing that I just thought of as well, if you look at all of the schools have the general instructional supply line, and that's always where most of the money is. So some of those supplies end up in there as well. And it's a general instructional supply, so a lot of times they'll end up transferring from that line if they see that they need things throughout the year.
Okay.
As well. Yeah.
I was just going to say, for us, with the new position, it's a 5-day cycle, so they're really getting STEM 1 day a
Right.
week. So, and our materials would be minimum, it's going to be your hands-on, popsicle sticks, vinegar, and all of that would come out of my instructional supplies.
Recyclables, stuff like that.
Masking tape.
Yeah. And that would be general instructional supplies, that wouldn't even come out of, we wouldn't have a separate account for that, that would be general instructional supplies.
So
Yeah.
I guess a question, at the middle school, is it the general instructional supplies account? That one I see is a bigger number here. That's where it comes out of? Okay.
Courtney, can you tell me a little bit about what happens regarding field trips for the district and whether or not that comes out of our budget, or is that purely paid for by PTO plus whatever is charged to the parents?
I think that would be more of a principal question.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm
It's
just
different.
asking, is that something that we budget every year? Is that something?
All of the above. But depending on the school and, you know,
Which
Any
principal
principal.
wants to come up first?
yeah.
Cindy, you haven't talked yet.
It's all different depending on the age level.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to tag team. I love it.
So for ours, the PTO will provide us with $10 per student for a field trip, and then whatever the cost is, transportation and tickets to enter, everything else, the parents will pay the rest.
Okay,
So it's not funded at all through the general fund.
okay,
And thus far, everything I've seen at the elementary school is the same, so $10 per student from PTO, and then the families typically cover the rest.
okay.
Do we put in any money for students who might not have the funds to? That just comes out
PTO
of
has
the
that in their
principal?
budget,
Scholarships.
yes, they call it a scholarship
okay.
for their, we haven't had it to use it at all, so, but it's there.
Okay. I feel like I heard a passing by comment at the elementary school this year about such and such grade may not take a field trip, there's no money for it. So as I'm looking at this, I'm kind of like, is there no money for it, or are we just not doing it because we don't want to charge people?
The Plymouth Plantation trip has gotten extremely expensive, the cost of the buses, right? And the problem is that, well, if you go with the coach buses that you can have all day, they're very, very expensive. If we go the other route, then we're limited with the amount of time that we have the buses, which would cut the trip shorter, and it's such a lengthy drive. You know, it's a big
Yeah.
field trip. They would get, it wouldn't be worth the
It's not
cost.
worth it,
So,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
we're gonna meet with our PTO and hopefully try to see if we can appeal to them and just tell them that the cost of these trips has increased across the board.
Just sit behind TV.
They don't know.
Your PTO.
But anyway, we have great PTO, but we,
You
Yeah,
do
they
have
do,
great
yeah.
PTOs. I will say at the primary and the elementary, even when my kids were there, they are phenomenal at supporting.
Yep, they absolutely are.
And the middle school PTO is very strong with,
Thank you,
Anybody else?
thank
Thank
you
you.
very
Thank
much.
Thank you.
Would the middle school and high school like to come up and talk about their field trips and how?
Let me, is that like the same Massachusetts-wide? Is that our district? Like, do schools not normally provide any money for field trips?
It fluctuates
all
from,
over the
it
place.
fluctuates,
Yeah.
again,
Just on the
again.
district,
Yeah.
A lot of schools.
It's not that we haven't provided any money. It just depends on, you know, what's going on, what's available, you know, it's a number of factors.
Some school
Yeah.
for instance, we need to use our school choice to keep our doors open. So there are some school districts out there that use their school choice money for enrichment, for extras.
Extra stuff.
So they might be able to use, they have enough money in their operating to fund their schools, so they're able to take their school choice fund and do that maybe to offset the cost of field trips for students. We don't have that luxury.
Got it, okay.
So at the middle school, we try to do a field trip for each grade throughout. I know the seventh grade just came back from the Worcester Art Museum, and that was successful, and that was spread out over 2 days. It's balanced by parents paying for it. The PTO, as noted, it kind of shies away from the middle school as the kids get older, and trying to have people volunteer is tough, and I understand that. But we also have help from like the Music Parents Association. They put in for the field trip that they do for the music show out in Western Mass, the Big E, what they have for that. So depending on the class and depending on the organization, how much outside funds come in to do that. But we want to make sure each grade gets at least one special field trip for the year, and a little bit more when it comes to 8th grade at the end of the year.
Is that mostly parent-funded, the 8th grade? Yeah, I know they do
We do.
some good ones that they get excited for.
Yeah, they're very excited this year. They've chosen to go to, the Bravehearts are doing a baseball game, and the class officers voted that they wanted to do that over going up to Canopy Lake. So they'll be leaving for, I think, at 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock.
I was like, oh, that's good to know.
I know why that was my
I
reaction.
believe it's a 10 o'clock start time, and there's a curriculum to go with it. And I believe the whole stadium's going to be filled with schools from the area cheering on the team, so that'll be fun, and the kids are really excited about it, so.
Your 8th graders didn't tell you that?
Not,
No?
Surprise.
That's why I come here.
You know, the 8th grader has already gone to the Edward Kennedy Center to do that. We do a STEM field trip down to Gillette as well. We try to get them out and about, cultured.
At the high school, a lot of our field trips are club-oriented. So it kind of runs through a slightly different avenue. Student fundraising, club fundraising, things of that nature. I've been up here several times this year, you know, advocating for our clubs and activities. And, you know, some of them are just amazing at getting people to donate and selling what they can, you know, within the limits, just to make sure that they can make ends meet for the trips that they want to go on and the trips that they want to do. So that's kind of primarily what happens at the high school, because things get a little more convoluted where you know, you might have kids in the same classes of different grades. So you might have a 10th grader in the same class as an 11th or a 12th grader at some point, and a 9th grader here or there. So we're less grade-based and more subject matter-based and moving along in those subject matters. But yeah, that's primarily kind of how we go about business. So when we look at field trips for the high school, I did request a small jump under student activities, under transportation, and I was graciously granted that small little bump.
No, but we do budgets in some, and you'll see that it's a 2440 function code. Sometimes for a little transportation or this or that, it depends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So seeing kind of what happened this year, that's part of the
Gave it a little
direction.
bump.
Part of the direction we're going to look at.
But it's mostly club-oriented. You don't really see, like, I don't know, AP science class isn't trying to go do, I don't know, something specific to that class or something like that.
No, it's more likely our GSA club or our science club or our or DECA or student council or
Robotics.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, they want to go to a competition. They want to go to. They're advancing, you know, in their.
Does the senior class not do a trip? Oh, wait, we just talked about they're doing Disney. Got it.
And we always make sure that no student that wants to go, if they don't have the funds, we make sure those students are taken care of as well. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Not for them.
Thank you so much. Thank
you.
Coming up.
Is all of the athletics under, it would all be under middle
school and
and
high
high school?
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm. Now it would
High school is on
be,
page
for
22.
instance, the middle school is on page 17 of 24. It's function code 3510. Those are the digits after the school code, but it's, it says athletics, total athletics there, and it's all broken out.
And high school's on 22 of 24.
I'm wondering where I would see the textbooks that we're bringing on board for next year. So I'm looking at page 15, and I see a total textbooks amount for 2023. Is that meant for next year's school year?
As far as,
Like, it's what we spent now to bring this textbooks in for
See,
2024?
You know what, textbooks and supplies, for DESC chart of accounts and the changes they've made it extremely complicated. So we used to always put textbooks in 2410.
What was,
Now, they have to go to another account because if they're subscription-based. It used to be that if it was a hard textbook, and then everything that came with it could go in the 2410. Then they switched both from instructional and textbooks to another line. They keep changing things, and then we had to go to another object code as well. If you look on 2410,
Yep.
where we always had them, you know, before, you had the license and subscriptions, object code 53406, and then all the others were hard copy textbooks. We had to break it out, and then they made another change. That's the problem, they keep making changes.
Check
So
my memory if I'm accurate. The math textbooks, were they purchased out
So
of the
they're-
FY24 budget or FY25?
For math specifically, they were just purchased, yeah.
So they were purchased out of FY24.
FY24, they just came in, they're sitting in
But
boxes,
what I
they're
was
absolutely
saying is that
beautiful.
you'll see.
That goes 6 through 8. with manipulatives, everything, really solid buy for how much money we spent for how much we got. A lot of hard work by the math department, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And they're thrilled to have that material. I appreciate that's going forward, and now just got to stamp Douglas Public Schools into every single piece of material.
Yeah.
But it is quite an impressive amount of material we received for that.
Right.
So that's what Mr. O'Brien is talking about, is one example that, as you know, when I was reviewing the FY24 budget, not only for 24, also mostly for 25, but if I saw that we had some needs that were more immediate and we didn't want to wait, then I did authorize some purchases to be made in FY24 to do it now, rather than make them wait.
So is that what I'm seeing then on 15, the 6850 for FY '24?
You talking
The
about
licenses and
page?
subscriptions then?
Are you what page you on?
15.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm just trying to we've been talking about doing a lot of things, and we've been doing a lot of good things, and I just want to see, I'm looking to see where it's
So,
reflected in the budget.
As far as, okay, so for middle school, they have, the new code is on page 16. It's 2455, and you'll see licenses, subscriptions. So that would mean that there's textbooks and some instructional supplies as well that are now in this function code.
Okay.
Yeah, 23,632. But that is a combination of things, so.
So this includes the hard textbooks then?
Nope, this is the license and subscription types of textbooks. The ones that he just purchased, that
Yep.
he was speaking of, those were hard textbooks that we
So
just
where
purchased
would we
this
see
year.
those?
We already purchased them. This is the FY25 budget.
Okay.
Yeah, we purchased them in FY,
The
this year.
reason you're not seeing it.
Yeah.
We're in FY '24 in the budget, because they were purchased in FY '24, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So
Yeah.
what page, which?
It wouldn't be,
Oh,
because
no, it
this is,
wouldn't be.
this
No,
is the
this is
FY.
budget. Yeah, this is budget to
If
budget.
you look, it says
Yeah.
FY24 school committee approved operating budget. This is
Yeah.
what you approved last.
Right, and we spent
Yeah.
beyond
Last year.
So
what we-
can you please share with us, send to the committee,
Yeah.
from FY '24, the amount where it was in the budget charged?
Oh, it actually could have been even school choice. So you just want to know where we pay for it?
Yes, I
Okay.
just
Oh,
wanna
yeah.
know.
I mean, we've got things coming in
Yeah.
the 24-25 school year where I'd like to see how it's reflected in our budgeting process. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it wouldn't be, a budget is, it's by line.
Current year of FY
That makes sense, right? What am
I know what
asking
you're,
for?
I know
Yeah.
what you're looking for.
yeah, it's the, so in last year's budget, when was it purchased?
This year's.
It was this year.
This
yeah.
year's
Right,
budget,
this
yeah,
year's budget,
yeah.
which,
Yeah.
again, it's last year because we're talking about FY '25, right? So this year's budget,
Yeah.
where did it post to?
Yeah,
Give us that, and we're good to go.
yeah, okay, yeah.
So,
It's
Separate
tough
from
when
the
you're
budget
talking
process,
about
yeah.
next year, but
Yeah,
you're
you're
talking this
going-
year,
Yeah.
but you're talking next
this
year.
is the
but-
actual.
Yeah.
We're-
Right, which is different from budget, yeah, gotcha. I'll send that to you, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
And to clarify, it's not textbook for every single student, it's the electronic version, it's a subscription, it's the stuff that goes with it, boxes and boxes of that, so you wouldn't be taking your brown paper shopping
Yeah, I
bag. and
think people are
getting
moving
it
away
up
from
for-
that now.
It just
Kinda
blends in
miss
well
that.
with
It
what
was nice, but,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Any other questions on the FY '25 budget?
So, it's probably a little bit complicated. So, translation services, are those under contractual services by building? Okay. Okay. Do you know roughly what we spend on them?
Can we
If
have you come up,
Yeah,
just to keep it,
sorry.
keep it kosher? I know, it's like musical chairs today.
Yeah.
Forgive me, I don't have the exact amount. We put it into the budget as projected and being conservative in case there is more translation services than we expected. But it's, we go through a company who would provide, we have a couple companies we use, who provide the translators. Most of our written translation is either done through software programs that we actually have. There are a few that sometimes require, and that's the more expensive version. But we usually use a software program to do our translations.
I was just wondering where there's a lot of people entering the Commonwealth right now, and like, do we, I don't think we expect in our community, but I think it's also important that we're prepared. If, I know that our neighboring community wasn't prepared to have a lot of people in need of translation services, so.
Yeah, that neighboring community that a lot of refugees came to the hotel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a lot.
With 24 hours' notice.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and again, I mean, obviously, we don't want to put money in something that we're not going to end up using, but also to be careful.
We have to be mindful
Yeah.
of the conditions around us.
Right.
To make sure that we're being inclusive for all.
Exactly.
Which you go back to being prudently conservative with a school choice, because if something like that happened, that might be.
That would be
Would
the,
why we would, yeah.
Correct.
No, thank you.
Absolutely.
so thank you for the discussion, because that's important for us to all be mindful of the fact of where, if a scenario were to pop up tomorrow, how would we as a school handle it?
Just curious, and it looks like it's by school, so I'm trying to like flip through school by school. I think I'm looking at the primary school. Nurse substitute, it looks like we don't budget anything. Am I reading this right for the right school? On page 3 at the bottom, we're talking about medical and
Oh, no,
health
that's,
services.
that's district-wide?
But then there's another nurse substitute listed here, so again, I'm probably now jumping up to,
So on
Elementary
page
school.
3, that's district-wide, we don't need to budget anything in district-wide for nurse substitutes.
okay. What
Because-
does that come out of when we
You know-
use those nurse substitutes?
It comes out of each school, for each school that needs
Yeah,
them.
that's probably
And then
not-
we do budget in another line that you'll see at the on page 3, the top line, we budget in a separate line for the nurse for the summer school. That's in a different line, but all subs are by school, nurse subs.
Nurse subs are just paid for,
You go to page 8.
yep. Oh, yeah, that's
Still in the
one.
primary, about halfway down, it says nurse salary, then it says nurse substitute.
And I've
it's
got the
there.
rate and how many.
So I guess that's my question. How come one school doesn't have a budget for a nurse substitute?
Because that's district-wide, that's.
No, that's district-wide.
Oh, I see. This is it. This is the,
That's
And
primary.
then it's by school, there's
School is
4
the
different
actual
schools.
money.
Yeah, so each school does have money in each of their lines, for all kinds of subs. We have to budget for loads of different kinds of categories of subs.
got it. And is this does the medical supplies go the same way that the teacher supplies go? Do the nurses individually
Yeah, that
put
would be in the nurse's budget. Yep, and actually, you'll see, still staying on the same page, using the primary as an example, you see nurse supplies right there. This is all governed by DESC, how these all have to be budgeted, and what lines they have to be in, what function codes, and DOR, object codes. You know. Yep, so everything has to be building-based, except if it's district-wide. Applies to all buildings, kind of, like the summer program. That's for students from all, so. And again, if you guys, and I know I've said this before, but if you ever come up with anything after, all questions don't have to be asked here this evening. If you're looking at it, just any questions that you have, shoot me an email, give me a call, I'll be happy to answer it, because I want you to understand and get familiar with it, and.
It's for people watching at home, too.
Yeah, yep.
Any other questions?
Need a
Everybody all
motion to-
set?
Everybody all set? So I need a motion to adjourn the public comments section of the public hearing comment for the FY 2025 budget.
Move to adjourn the public hearing comment for the FY 2025 budget.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
Meg.
Seconded by Meg. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thanks. And now, do we make the motion to approve it?
Oh, we can just wait till we get down to, yeah.
We can
I
do
mean,
it.
you could, but we do have it in the consent agenda, and that's when we usually do the consent. We can just do it at that time. Because that's a consent item.
Moving on to the superintendent's goals presentation.
All right, I'm going to try to make this exciting. So, again, in front of you, you have a copy of my goals. As I've said all along, I'm thankful for the committee to allow all of us the ability to take some risks and do some things differently with our goals, because it's what helps us grow. So in front of you, you have everything. I'm going to go through it section by section. There are 4 standards that I'm being evaluated under. The first standard is instructional leadership, and we made the decision to look at data-informed decision-making over the summer. And this talks about leading the administrative team in identifying and using multiple sources of evidence to assess, communicate district strengths, weaknesses, and areas for improvement. And when talking about data, it's not just looking at numbers. It's not just looking at test scores. It's looking at attendance. It's looking at behaviors. It's looking at class schedules. It's looking at teacher schedules. It's looking at patterns that principals are seeing in schools. It's looking at what we see and we observe through classroom observations and walkthroughs. It's what we see at recess. It's what we see before school, after school. So it's taking all that data to inform our decision-making. I'll jump over, I went through some of this in January. I'll look at what we've done so far since January through the end of March. One of the things the principals have been doing is looking at their FY24, FY25 schedule. Not only the bell schedule and how periods rotate, but teacher schedules, in order to maximize efficiencies, in order to make sure that we have the resources in place to support our students. Another thing we were able to do this year, again through some good budgeting, is we brought back MCAS prep. So what we did prior to the MCAS exam is principals identified at-risk students, reached out to families, and we ran before and after school sessions at the elementary and middle school. Did we do it at the high school? Elementary and middle school for at-risk students. So again, taking that data, looking at it, and what could we do to better help our students. Special education, we know there's a delta between the performance of our special education population and typical peers. I know Dr. Roosevelt's talked a lot about looking at our inclusion model. We've talked a lot about MTSS and what we can do to help close those gaps. So again, we're constantly looking at data. It started to become part of our vernacular, where when I meet with the principals, I meet with Cordy, they'll say, hey, Paul, we want to talk to you about something, and yes, we have data to back it up. We want to, talk to you about this initiative, and yes, we have the data. Or, hey, I want you to look at this, and here's the data to support it. So those types of conversations and decision-making is evolving in the district, and it's really good to see. Standard 2 is around management and operations, and we focused in on environment. And that talks about making sure we have orderly and efficient, student entries, dismissals, lunches, transitions, assemblies, recess, and then making sure our buildings are clean and creating that safe and supportive learning environment. And we talked a lot about the importance of SEL. And this is a lot longer list than data, because this is a lot easier to put in writing because it's stuff that you do and it's big, where a lot of the data things we talk about are small little Bob and I at a meeting talking, Courtney and I in a meeting copying, leading an initiative, taking information from a meeting with a staff member, for instance. One of the things we talked about is we didn't have a formalized process for after an incident happened with a student to document it and debrief as a staff. That was information that was brought to our attention, a piece of data. We sat, we looked at it, and we created a form. And then Mr. O'Brien said, the form is a little cumbersome, let's put that into a Google form to make it easier. So those are just data points that you look at to drive some change. In terms of the SEL and making sure we're creating a safe and supportive environment for everyone, I think I said in January, we had MEMA come here and do a tabletop activity. One of the things they did was they came here and they presented a scenario of a chemical spill at the high school. And that was done in conjunction with us, police, and fire, and the town. And they walked us through an activity, and they gave us recommendations based off of our safety plan and some protocols to put in place. So we just debriefed on that yesterday, and we're going to put a lot of their recommendations into practice. I'm grateful for the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator. They're investing over $250,000 in a new security system for the school department, for our students and for our staff. That includes cameras, that includes door enunciators, that includes alarms. So they're doing a lot. I think we're opening the bid documents on May 15th. We're going to do it in a couple different phases, but phase one hopefully will be completed by the start of the school year. But again, that investment of over $250,000 for safety is impressive, and I'm grateful for the town for that. At the town meeting, in the budget of the police department is a new resource officer for the school. So we'll have 2 school resource officers here, one on this campus and then one for the primary, elementary, and middle. And again, an investment from the town for the school department to help keep our students and staff safe. Looking at some other things, Bob's been working hard to bring Handle with Care to the schools, and it's a partnership between the police department and the district attorney's office to inform us if a child was in crisis or a family was in crisis the night before, so we know when that student's coming in what's been happening. We've talked a lot about MTSS and continue to implement that MTSS here in our schools. The elementary schools exploring the WIN block, what I need in terms, and I don't know where they are in the continuum of it, but it's part of the evaluation of the 24-25 budget, but it's creating a block of time to address not only academic but social emotional needs. One thing that came through, again, it was a data point that fits in data, but also is here under the standard, is principals meet on a weekly, or sometimes monthly basis with representatives from DESPER and from the DTA. And one thing they've included in there is starting to talk about health and safety. So what are some things that are happening in the schools that are of concern to staff members that they can bring to our attention that we can help rectify?
Apologies for anybody that's watching, DESPA is and DTA is.
DTA is the Douglas Teachers Association. DESPA is the Douglas Educational Support
Educators?
Professionals Association. I might have got the wrong, but it's, okay. And then again, we're exploring, and we're working on creating a new partnership with the Massachusetts Behavioral Health Helpline, which is again going to look to bring new supports to our students and families and staff. Third standard is family and community engagement. It's that sharing responsibility, and it's empowering our administrators to regularly collaborate and to address students with families, students' academic, social, emotional needs. This is all about communication, and it's continuing that communication. And, you know, an interesting thing with communication is you can never do enough, and if you do it in one form, people want it in another. People want live, then you do Zoom. So again, it's how can we continue to communicate and engage our community. Really excited to be bringing Power School to Douglas. We're switching over from iPass to Power School. Big shout out to John Calabrese, Courtney, and John's team for making that transition from iPass to Power School. It has so much more capabilities and the ability to increase two-way communication and share information with families, and have families communicate with us is great. Just one of the things we were talking about is, you know, a lot of our schools use Google Classroom. Google Classroom will sync up to your child's class roster. So when you go and you pull up the 6 classes your child's taking, and you click on, for instance, English 9, the Google Classroom will be attached to that. So the mom, I don't have any homework. As long as Google Classroom is updated, you'll be able to see that. Really excited, partnering with PAL to bring a community collaborative conversation in May. Police are going to be present, fire is going to be present, school's going to be present, school committee is going to be present, PAL's going to be present, and we're leading a town-wide discussion on how we can better engage our families and partners, not only here in the school system, but as a community as a whole. So again, really excited for that here. Last week, we had a virtual math night at the elementary and primary schools. Buildings continue to do a nice job with newsletters, sharing information. We continue to try to do as much as we can with families, inviting them into our buildings. The last standard is professional culture, continuous learning, and this is talking about developing, nurturing a culture in which staff members are reflective about their practice and use student data to continuously improve instruction and achievement results. And like I said, this is a massive shift. We just really started diving in and rolling up our sleeves, looking at data here in the past few years. We've always had MCAS, but when you're looking at MCAS, you're looking at a different cohort of kids, as we talked about earlier. So your 8th grade teachers are looking at what last year's 8th graders did, and we all know that one year to another, your student population needs change dramatically. So what worked in one year may not work in another. So the ability to bring STAR and NWEA to teachers' fingers is amazing. Really excited that we were able to have Panorama. We did that through a grant. It's budgeted next year in the budget going forward, and that's going to give us the ability to further drill down and look at data. But it's having those continuous conversations. They happen in common planning time. They happen in our grade level meetings. We're using, as we see here, NWEA IXL, which is a program that ties in with NWEA that the middle school is using to address areas of deficiency. One thing that we did in not only our October PD day, beginning of school PD day, January, but most of our staff meetings, is have that UDL, Universal Design for Learning, conversation about what can we be doing to break down barriers to have students access the curriculum. And the only way you can know how to break down barriers is to be reflective on your practice and reflective of what kids need and drive that change. Really happy that we finally able to get vertical teams up and running. When's our first meeting? April 23rd is our first meeting. We have volunteers from each of the grade levels to get together. We also have representatives from special education, and we're doing Cindy, help me out, because I know we're doing some overlap.
We're doing a K to 5 and then a 5 through 12.
Okay.
In ELA and math.
So again, that's coming, and I think in our May school committee meeting, we'll be talking about what those vertical teams look like. But again, they were here, then they weren't, then they were, then they weren't, then COVID happened, and we tried to bring them back, and we couldn't, and now they're back. So again, excited to have those vertical teams, and that's all about being reflective and looking at information to drive change. So again, you put all this together, and we've done a lot in a year, plus managing CAF duty, recess duty, buses, and everything else that gets thrown at you during the day. Any questions on the 4 standards before we look at SMART goals?
We're good.
The first SMART goal is around really developing a PD plan around universal design for learning. And UDL has, the main part of UDL is removing barriers that prevent kids from accessing the curriculum and learning to the fullest of their potential. It has 3 parts. It has engagement, right? So what can we do to better engage kids to make them excited about learning? Because when you're not excited, it makes it trickier to learn. Representation talks about how can we present the information. Not all kids learn the same way, so you have to be able to differentiate. And the last one is action and expression, and that's how are kids able to interact and show that they know the information. And again, giving kids choice in how they do things. This has been a topic, like I said, before school PD, October, again in December, staff meetings. It's what we've been doing to try to get students and teachers the professional development that they need to do it. Interestingly, Katie Novak, who runs Novak Educational Consultants, is a nationally known presenter on UDL. She happens to be local. And just looking at a website for some information, it says in order to effectively get and change your culture to be a true UDL school, it takes 4 to 6 years for that implementation to happen. We're in year 1. We're in year 1 of a 4 to 6. It just takes time for everyone to understand what that looks like, how that works inside classes, what are some of the different options you can do to present or have kids interact with information. The other thing we did this year is all of our teacher observations, when the principals and the coordinators and directors do them, all of our observations have feedback around UDL. So if a principal sees something around engagement, they'll comment on it using their UDL language. If they see something on representation, they'll comment on it using UDL language. And if they see something on action and expression, they'll comment on it using that UDL language. Conversely, if something could have been enhanced using UDL, that comes up as a recommendation. So again, just trying to embed that language and show people examples of that. The next goal is under instructional leadership, and it's using data to ensure that 100% of our students are at or above grade level by June of '24. Our primary and elementary schools used STAR data, and I have that here for you. NWEA did an assessment in September, October, did one in January. For the March one, what they did is they just flagged the at-risk students. And the reason we made the decision to flag the at-risk students, we're so close to MCAS, and motivating 6th and 7th and 8th grade students to take two-hour tests back-to-back is really tricky when they know one may not be as important as the other. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to use that data of our underperforming kids to make sure teachers had good data as they're looking in the last week or two to give that big push towards MCAS. And then the high school is using MCAS and AP data, which unfortunately won't be here until the end of the year, but they used last year's data to drive a lot of the change of curriculum this year and a lot of discussions in common planning time. What you have here is a look at our ELA data as of March 25th. And I didn't include on watch, but I did include, just to read this left to right, the first two columns are beginning of the year and March, and we're looking at or above benchmark. As you can see, from grades K to 4, we had increases in students who were at or above benchmark at the beginning of the year to where they are now. We saw a decline from 65 to 64% in the 5th grade. In our intervention, urgent and regular intervention, you can see the decline in grades K through 4 from beginning of the year to middle of the year. Again, that progression is great, again, a testament to the work that the teachers are doing, but we can see an increase from 20 to 21% in the 5th grade. I met with Mr. Haynes last week, and again, he was diving into this information. We met again today. He's going to common planning times to address the individual grade levels and talk about, okay, in this grade we have 4 kids, in this grade we have 6, in this grade we have 8. Yes, we're still doing MCAS, but we still have 2.5 months of learning that we can do for our students. So we don't want to stop because MCAS has just happened.
And they're still using those plans.
They're still using.
Just to confirm.
Yes. Yes. Just to confirm, the answer is yes. Big Brother's always watching. So they're going to use those plans. And again, I know it's the end of the year, but we wouldn't waste September, October, and halfway through November. We can't waste April, May, and June. I know it gets trickier when the weather gets warmer, but we need to keep pushing again to get those kids to benchmark, because again, it's just setting them up for that next year for success. If you look at math, again, there isn't an assessment for kindergarten, but if you look at grades 1, 2, 3, and 4, you see some increases there from beginning of the year until March. In the 5th grade, there was the decline from 79 to 78%, but again, we saw some substantive growth in 1 through 5. And then again, looking at the number of students who were in that urgent and intervention category from beginning of the year through March, you can see again a decline from beginning of the year to March, but again, the increase in 5th grade from 16 to 18%. So, again, it's one data point that we have, and I've had this conversation, principals, I had the conversation with staff. NWEA and STAR is not the end-all, be-all. And, we talked about it earlier today before our meeting. It's a vehicle that we can use to drive conversations with staff. It's a vehicle we can use to have principals have good, true, authentic conversations about teaching and learning, about direct, explicit instruction, about how we can drive change inside classrooms. We all know things from our personal lives, from our professional lives, that when you have dialogue, when you look at data, and when you have good, authentic, true conversations, change happens. So it's not that STAR is the end-all, be-all in things. It is a tool that's used for teachers and principals to have authentic conversations about kids, about what we can do to drive change. And again, Panorama now has the ability to look at student data. It was interesting. We did something quickly today. We pulled up, I forget what grade level it was, it might have been middle school, and we looked at some of the at-risk students. It might have been 6th or 7th grade. There were 9 students. Out of the 9 students, I believe 4 all had over 15 absences. So there's a relationship there. Remember, the state defines chronic absenteeism as 18 students, 18 absences by the end of the year. And we already have 4 of those 9 who, if the pattern continues, will be considered chronically absent by the end of the year. If you're not in school, you can't learn. So again, that's another data point that drives maybe why some of the scores. We had one student who was close to 30 absences. So again, when you're absent that much,
Are we seeing that in 5th grade? Any insight? What's happening in 5th grade? I feel like everybody's numbers are looking.
So I'm going to have Mr. Haynes come to another meeting to talk a little bit more. They finished the test last week. He rushed to give me the numbers the end of last week so I could get this into the report. He's starting to dive into it. I can have him come to another meeting to give you more follow-up information as to the nitty-gritty as to what happened, what the plan is, but we're not ready to do that today.
Okay.
I'll add him to that.
Any questions?
I got one more.
Okay.
Sorry. I was just writing a note to come. And then the last standard, my professional practice goal, was around those CASEL competencies about SEL, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And we've done so much work on SEL this year. The middle school and the high school purchased a K-12, 6 through 12 SEL program that they implemented. We had Erin Moore come here this year and do some PD with our staff around morning meeting. We're continuing to try to do better and better things with our morning meeting. You saw a 4th grade presentation. We have Panorama that just went active last week with us. One of the things we're going to be able to do with Panorama, one of the reasons why I really liked it, is we're going to be able to, sometime in April or May, probably May, issue a survey to all of our students to get a baseline of a lot of these competencies. I was hoping to have Panorama rolled out earlier in the year, but we didn't sign the contract in October, and it took us 5 months to get the data uploaded. But what we're going to be able to do next year is do a pre-test and a post-test with all the SEL competencies that Panorama provides to see if we're meeting the needs of students. I'm hoping to use the data from this year in May from that assessment to give to the principals, so as they're planning their morning meeting, their interventions for next year, they can see areas of weakness for kids. So if we're spending a whole lot of time on self-awareness and we have an A+ in it, maybe we need to wean back a little bit on that and push something. But again, without collecting data, you don't know where you need to be making those switches in morning meeting. So we're going to be doing that assessment with students in May. Now, are there any questions?
Sorry.
Well, you had mentioned before in some of our conversations that you were looking to have more communication about what's happening with SEL being sent home so families can actually see that. And
So I asked the principals to put it in their newsletters about SEL, and they said they've been doing it. Is it in your, so they've been including it in their newsletters about what's going on each month in SEL.
Okay.
With it.
And I think, and for the younger grades, is it going also home in newsletters as well? Okay, that's great too.
Good for parents, to be able to, if we're driving, I was in a 2nd grade class, I learned the difference between there, and there, and 2, and 2. That was Tuesday. And as the teacher was doing the lesson, I forget the skill, what's your skill of the month in SEL? Do you remember?
Decision-making.
Okay, decision. She was able to tie in that with something they were doing inside the classrooms. So they're reinforcing that SEL competency that they're working at morning meeting throughout the day, and the teacher referred to it inside the classroom. Again, just one example of, I think that was yesterday.
Well, and at home, parents can be like,
And
oh,
parents
I
can say-
heard you're learning about this. Tell me about what you're learning about.
Right.
And they can rattle it off, too, so.
And if the kids are making bad decisions in the second, third, fourth, and fifth grade, you now know that they're talking about making good decisions
Right.
this month in school.
Anyone else?
I think it's been great with the focus on data. I know I've said that before, but I think that that's what we really needed, because if you don't look at what's happening, in the numbers, I mean, it doesn't always come to light, and I think that that's really helped to where we can change and better what we're delivering to students. So, and just from what you've said in this, a lot of things have come to light by looking at data.
And even looking at numbers, it's interesting. I know that when we presented some of our NWE data, we didn't see the growth that we wanted to see from the middle school. But if we remember back to the accountability presentation in October, if you remember, the middle school's accountability data was the best in the district. They met or exceeded the majority of the benchmarks from the state from the previous year. So their NWEA data may not reflect it, but when the kids took the MCAS exam, they exceeded the benchmarks set forth by the Commonwealth from last year to this year. So, again, tough to motivate those 7th and 8th graders sometimes when they know the test doesn't count. But again, when it came time to take the test, so you got to be careful sometimes looking at the numbers. I'm going to quote Ms. Keegan again. There's a story behind the numbers, right? So you have to look at it and dive into it and look at it. But if you don't look at them, you're never going to know what the story is.
Are we looking at the data plus the grades and the correlation there of like what is actually coming out on their report cards? And I ask that because I feel like it's gotten a little bit test heavy, and a lot of the kids have caught on that it doesn't count. So like you said, I worry about putting too much emphasis on just these tests, and it feels like the kids are getting a little bit burnt out, especially now that we've moved to the 4 times a year, right? On some of this, not all of the schools, but some of them, right, moved to 4 times a year.
The K through 5 is 5 times, correct? And then the middle school is 3. Sometimes
So
4.
are we looking at data versus grades? And I also say that with the knowledge that I know some students that have been really thoughtful and cognizant of their grades, going to teachers, focused on their grades, which in my opinion is where it should be, and not on the testing, and maybe not getting the support they necessarily need. I actually thought it was my child specific, and then I like figured out, oh, this is like across different parents are telling me this. So I can talk to you offline about that, but
Yeah.
I guess my thing is, I personally love to look at the data. I think it's like really informative. I just want to make sure that that's not I want to look at their grades as well along with this data to see what it's saying.
So the grade conversation's an interesting I'll go to what I know the best, the high school. It's always interesting when you look at AP scores and you see kids who have straight A's in AP classes and then take the AP test and get a 2. Where 3 is considered passing, 5 is the best. So what's the correlation? Why are you getting a 90, how do you have a 96 average in a class, but then you have a 2 on the test? What's the correlation? And that's something that we look at a lot and have those discussions. And
At the
again,
end of the year, and they just want to take it, because they get the grade after they graduate. It doesn't matter. So, I mean, it's.
But in these instances, like we've got these littles taking test after test.
Yeah.
I feel like too, the elementary school has been so focused on, all I hear about is MCAS all the time and less about, now I know MCAS is about to be over and we'll jump back into
Correct.
some more broad learning. I don't know what the right term is, not so focused on MCAS, but I just think district-wide, it's starting to feel very test-heavy.
yeah, we do a lot of us, because we need the information to drive the change inside the class. It's a means of formative assessment to be able to have teachers adjust their practice to meet the needs of kids. MCAS, like it or hate it,
I know.
it's here. You know, Dr. Rosenthal presented a couple days, maybe last week, or last time we were here, about our SPED report card, and we actually are losing funding from our 240 grant because there is such a discrepancy in our MCAS scores from special education students to typical peers. So there's funding associated with it. That funding translates into opportunities for students, but you have to try to find that balance. And again, I think once we get into a deeper culture and climate of using data to drive decision-making and drive change inside classrooms, you can see some of those things shrink. When we first did STAR, we only did it 3 times a year, and what was happening was we did in September, and then we did in January, and 4 months had gone by, and we had seen very little change. So when we implemented that, how long is that November one that you give? How long does it take kiddos to take?
Oh, for us, it's only a matter of like 10 minutes.
Okay, and for elementary, how long is that March one?
It's not much longer.
Yeah, so it's 15, 20 minutes, that mid-gap one, and it gives teachers a good, quick snapshot as to what's working, what's not working, what do we need to change. And again, that's what drives a lot of, and again, teachers are using STAR, but they're also using classroom observations. When a kid's raising their hands, who looks engaged in class, when you give a kid a worksheet, who's coming up and asking for help, and who's not asking for help. So there's a lot of dialogue that comes from that, but I can appreciate the over-testing, and it is.
It's a hard balance.
It's a
It
hard
really
balance,
is.
but you need the information in order to, because what you don't want to see happen is give a test in September, give another one in May, and then
Yeah.
realize,
Then
oh
you
my
miss the
gosh,
whole opportunity.
it's too late.
I also like that we use multiple data points and it's not focused on one thing. Oh, MCAS, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, we have to have multiple ways to look at the data. I like
And,
that.
go ahead, Ken.
One thing I just want to mention is in terms of the testing, like the difference between the STAR, teachers can actually, they can conduct the STAR testing with their class, and they can do it, and they can sort of, the school day can feel normal. MCAS is so much different, and kind of everything grinds to a halt.
Yeah, it's own beast.
Yeah.
And it is, right, it's very intrusive for the whole school. But I will say the STAR testing, teachers can make it work and just make it part of their morning. I mean, they can do morning meeting and then go into the STAR testing and have it done. Like over the course of the week, they can get it done, and we don't really feel it throughout the school as opposed to MCAS.
And how long, when you do the big one, the 3 times a year, how long is that one?
It's the same.
It's all the same 15, 20 minutes. The issue's at the middle school where their STAR testing can take anywhere from 60 minutes to 2 hours per. So when Bob does it at the middle school for ELA and math, it's 5 hours. It's the day. So that's that balance. We're looking at potentially doing STAR in 6, 7, and 8 to be able to keep that consistency K to 8, but also to not over-test where, Bob said he was watching some kids take the test, and if the passages were short, they would read them and select. If the passage got a little too long, they jumped to the question.
I don't know any of those.
I don't know. If the passage got too long, Bob knows there's no way you could read that fast and jump to the multiple choice question to answer it. So, again, another data point we're looking at.
Any other questions?
I think it would be really cool if we did STAR all the way through, to be able to watch a student all the way through
Yeah.
and see what they've done.
So I've been here for 4, we've used STAR now for 3 years, and no one has ever said, why aren't we doing STAR K to 8? I had a conversation with a high school teacher who said, why aren't we doing STAR K to 8? I said, that's a good question, never thought of it. And again, talking about data points and just using, conversational data and observations, teacher brought that to our attention, and now that spurred a dialogue, which could bring about change, and it was just a data point through a conversation with a staff member that didn't involve numbers or testing, but could drive, eventually.
So is the STAR for middle school like less than this whole 5-hour thing that they have to do, or we don't know for STAR for the middle school?
We have a webinar scheduled.
NWA is very, very clunky. Students on a long passage.
Thank you.
NWA is very clunky. If a student's on a long passage, their Chromebook will time out, and then it's a 4-step process to get that student back onto the test. And as that happens, you find a second and a third, and they're coming up with their Chromebook. So a lot of time is wasted that way. It does take up the whole morning. I think it's too intensive. My beef against NWA is long. They want students to have 50% correct answer, 50% incorrect. If they get a question right, the next question's more difficult, more challenging, and then the computer times out on them, and then they come back. And it is frustrating, and I think it's frustrating for the students as well. I would like to see a quicker test where we could do that and not take up a whole day of, whole morning of school.
Yeah.
Just to get that data point.
So again, looking at the why behind the numbers, or as Courtney says, the story behind the story. If you've timed out 3 times, then you have to go see Mr. O'Brien, as pleasant as he is, to have his computer reset at some point.
As an adult, I would be done.
I'd be
I'm
over
done.
it, yeah.
Honestly, yeah, yeah.
There we have it. There we have it.
That sums it up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
So I'm going to move to, if there's nothing else, Dr. Vera,
All
about
set.
your superintendent evaluation. I have printed off our evaluation report, and I just wanted to walk you all through what I need you to complete. If you flip over the first page and go right to the student's performance, superintendent's performance goals, this is where you're rating him first. You want to do this section, the pages 3 through 7 first, before you do steps 2 and 1. So, because it rolls up, everything rolls up into 2 into 1. So, and then I highlighted for everybody in the document what actually were our goals for everybody.
That's the only part that we're checking, right?
You can do the whole kit and caboodle if you want to figure out whether or not he's, did meet some progress, significant progress, and met, and to figure out your overarching, because that's what step 2 is. The overarching is whether he was successful in here, unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, or exemplary.
Yeah, but here, we're not doing the non-highlighted parts.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so highlighted only on these pages?
Yep.
Okay. And then, the one that you sent us, do we do it electronically and just send it to you, or do we physically do this?
You can do it electronically, you can do this and scan it, I
Yeah.
don't care.
Okay.
Just-
That's how I've done it in the past, is I've
So,
done it
and
like
then
this. I've
I
sat and
just-
just with
Take a
his
picture.
goals, and I've literally.
Well, don't
had
take a
these-
picture, give me something, because I need it in a PDF, because I take and put your stuff, put it into the actual document. If you're trying
I've
to
done
save
it
me,
electronically and also just typed on it.
Okay.
just try to make it easier on me, because I'm combining everybody's information into our
Okay.
evaluation.
PDF is tough to cut and paste.
I've got to,
Yeah, you got to work around?
I've got to work around. I've got one that lets me do, so. So I would ask if we can try to get this back before April vacation, just because it's pretty chaotic. And then if we have to meet, we would have to put something, I would like to put something on the calendar, so if people could tell me, the last week in April. We may need to do a public session to.
The 22nd or the 29th? The week of the 22nd or the 29th?
If we don't have a consensus, like, if I don't have, like, if I have people that are 50-50, right? Then we need to meet to discuss it. Because it's due on May 1st.
Do we have to have
any
it?
time that week?
We're looking at the week of the 22nd, or the week,
Yeah, the week of the 20th, it has to be the week of the 22nd, because school committee will be on May 1st.
And it can't be Wednesday of that week.
You can't do,
Yeah,
yeah,
'cause I
it's
tested
kind of
that.
hard.
Yeah, because of that, yeah. That one's still scheduled, right?
That is still scheduled, correct.
You want to see if you need that meeting?
I would like to
Because that'll
put
be-
something, a placeholder there, because we have to advertise it and everything else. So it
Understood.
means it has to be posted before we go on April vacation. That's the only reason why I'm saying we need to put something at least there as a placeholder.
Virtually.
Oh, yeah, you'll definitely be virtually. Doesn't have to be in person, virtually.
Monday?
The 22nd?
Mm-hmm.
Does that give you enough time over vacation week to, or is that close?
Yeah, I didn't think about that, sorry.
I fly in on the 21st, so
Why don't we give it some time after?
Yeah, let's give you a little extra time then, one day.
because we,
Odd for you.
The Thursday.
the April 25th? Sure.
I
April
have-
25th?
What time
What
do you want
time?
to do?
What time?
I have to go to a balloon event from 4:30 to 5:30. Other than that, I don't care.
Do you want to put a placeholder for 6 o'clock on the 25th
Fine for me.
via Zooms?
Mhm.
That good with you?
What time did you say, 6?
6.
Yeah, it won't go an hour, right? After an hour, past an hour? Okay.
It should be really short and sweet.
Okay.
So placeholder on the 25th, school committee, superintendents, eval. 6 o'clock. All right. Now back to our regular scheduled program. Thank you all for humoring us. So everybody knows what they expected for the evaluation? All right.
And that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you so much.
Well, actually, I got a couple more things coming up.
You don't need to get out.
All right, moving on to the school committee subcommittee accounts payable report. I do believe I signed these warrants, so warrant 37 SCH 24, 37 HCHL 24, and MS 24-06, a batch of 10 in the amount of $90,661.18, and there was nothing out of the ordinary with this batch. And then the next batch was the warrant number 38 HCL 24, dated March 21st, 2024, in the amount of $26,156.06, and there were 2 items in there, and there were nothing out of the ordinary with this one either. Moving on to our consent agenda, the March 20th meeting minutes.
I just found one little typo on the building and maintenance and capital projects report. Just down there, it says Douglas High School alone has 173, and it just says H. It should say HVAC units, that's all.
So if nobody has any issues with that, we need to make a motion to annotate the adjustment that Courtney cited of the 173 HVAC units, right?
I move to approve the March 20th, 2024 school committee meeting minutes as amended.
Yep. Motion made by Monique, seconded by?
Meg?
Second by Meg. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thanks. Moving on to the FY 2025 superintendent proposed budget. If there's no questions, we'll be looking for a motion.
I move to approve the FY 2025 School Department General Fund operating budget in the amount of $15,343,852, and the FY 2025 school transportation budget in the amount of $1,932,147.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
Beth?
Second by Beth. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining?
Thank you.
Moving on to the FY 2025 Douglas Middle School and Douglas High School athletic fees.
Yes, just by way of a little bit of background information, as you know, the district did approve and implemented an athletic fee schedule with caps in FY '20. That was for the 2019-2020 school year. Since that time, the regular fee has been reduced and the subsequent cap amounts have been adjusted accordingly. For the current fiscal year, the high school athletic fee revenue is trending slightly more than FY 2023, with a projected lower year-end balance, just a little bit, due to increased use of revolving fund to offset the budget. And again, we need to see how it ends at the end of the year, but in the middle school athletic fee revenue is trending about the same as last year, with a slightly lower projected year-end balance as well. But the year-end balances for these accounts, they can vary significantly from year to year, with changes in participation rates, changes in fees, increases, decreases, increased use of revolving funds and all that, but this wasn't really the case. It seems to be pretty stable. So therefore, the amounts that are estimated for carryover balance and what we are projecting for going forward, I feel are sufficient to keep the current rate structure in place. But I do want to say that while we are recommending keeping the FY '24, 23-24 school year rate structure for the high school and middle school stay in place for the FY '25, the 24-25 school year, as per the attached document that we have here, same rates as last year. I do want to put it out there that, it's been a number of years that we've been doing this, but with all likelihood, to be honest with you, in FY '26, we would probably be looking at an increase. There's only so long you can do that. Prices are really going through the roof, coaches increase, everything is increasing. But, we've been remaining in good stead. We are using some of our projected, fund balance, but then again, that you don't want to build up a war chest of a fund balance, particularly with something like this, because it is from fees from parents, kind of like we did with the enrichment. So we are utilizing that, but we do want to have something there just in case something happens, or, there's lower participation, or you're not getting as much, revenue, whatever, but you're still paying for the coaches and supplies and things of that nature. So I didn't know if anyone had any problem with that or any questions regarding that for FY '25.
This pays for everything in the athletic department, or no, the school has separate budget money that comes in to
Yeah,
cover
so
that?
if the budget document that we do have here, we have for the middle school and for the high school, you'll see the athletic program is a 3520 function code, and it outlines all of the different categories. So, for instance, for the high school, it's a very good question, because it does show how, it is complicated with regard to funding all of these things. But again, we're very happy we were able to maintain our athletic programs between these two funding sources, so if you look at page, yes, exactly.
Did you
So
say add?
Add an athletic trainer, too.
Yes, for $35,000, so that's something we haven't
Oh,
been able to
add
do
the
for
athletic
years.
trainer. Got it. I thought you said team. I'm like, what are we adding to the team?
So on page 17 of 24, you'll see the middle school athletic program budget. So if you look at the third column from the right, so the superintendent's proposed budget, the $54,275, that's their estimated, budget for the ensuing year, for the FY '25 year. And you'll see that we are going to be offsetting that by looking at what we expect to carry over balance and what we expect to receive in revenue, and being conservative, of course, $20,000 to offset that. But there's still $34,275 funded by the general fund. And then for the high school athletic program, that is on page 22. Has more categories, much larger program, and you will see that the gross operating budget for that program is $325,772. It is being offset by $85,000 within this budget. So the general fund is funding $240,772. And again, it's a very hard balance, and I know that the school committee, totally understandably, particularly coming out of COVID, the idea was, and we all agree, we really felt that the priority was to have our program and see as many students as could participate in the athletics, and everything, frankly. Because we had all that time where they were not allowed to, and the more, to get them back to to normal. So we've been able to do that. We've been able to sustain our program. We've never talked about eliminating anything. We've added an athletic trainer, and I believe, if we even added, I can't recall, maybe a sport or two, like that we've added, but I'm not
No,
big sport, okay. Maybe not, okay.
not in recent times.
I
that
thought, yeah, I
remember.
thought we added something last year or this year. But anyway, it's all funded in the budget and within the appropriation.
I think we need to keep that as low as possible.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So to me, that's for FY '26. But it needs to be as low as possible.
I would say the same thing.
And so for me, that's where I think we all are going to have to put our creative cap on. But this is for all the students who utilize this. It's not just one particular group.
Right.
And for me, I'm okay with us being subsidized from the general fund to allow children to have.
Oh,
that.
absolutely.
So.
Absolutely, and it is in large part.
Keeping it, again, inflation and everything else, mindful of what's going around, keeping it as low as possible, I think keeps us, competitive.
Right. Agreed.
Because there are other places our students can go, and they pay $50.
And as a parent that lived through the years of it's all self-funded, we don't want to go back to that.
No, and again, that's what, it's a balancing act. It's a balancing act, yeah. That was 1 year that I
That
will
would-
never forget.
Yeah.
But we're very happy with where we are.
Yeah.
We're able to
I'm-
keep it current, keep it where it is, and keep the program, and even add the athletic director, so.
And add
I mean,
per-
athletic
Trainer.
trainer.
Trainer,
Yes.
right, and so,
Yeah.
if no one else has any further discussion, I'd be looking for a motion.
I move to approve the attached FY 2025 recommended athletic fee schedule, Douglas High School and Douglas Middle School, proposed tonight.
Motion made by Beth, seconded by?
Monique?
Seconded by Monique. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, and I have the next two. So, next on the agenda is see if the committee's looking to entertain a conversation about changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples' Day. Just some background, Indigenous Peoples' Day is a holiday that celebrates and honors Native American people and commemorates their histories and cultures. It's celebrated across the U.S. on the second Monday in October, and it is an official city and state holiday in various locations. What it does is it reimagines Columbus Day and changes the celebration of colonialism into an opportunity to honor the sovereignty, resilience, and immense contributions that the Native Americans have made to the world. In front of you, I have a list of just maybe about 20 schools locally and across the Commonwealth that quickly I knew had already made the change from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples' Day, and just looking to see if the committee is in agreement to making that change on the calendar.
What was the motivation to bring this up in Douglas? Just because other towns had done it?
It just came up as part of a conversation after I did the calendar and was asked to put it on the agenda.
I personally, knowing the very diverse parent and voter feelings in this town, I don't know how the town of Douglas will feel about this change.
While I don't know how they would feel about the change, I don't necessarily think that it's a bad change to make.
I personally am neutral on it. I'm just wondering what conversations are going to come at me later on based on people that I know in the town.
It was on the agenda. They could have come to public comment.
That's a good point.
And they can still come even after we vote on this.
Okay.
That's the whole purpose around an open meeting and why we have to post 48
agendas
hours
and- yep.
and post agendas
Yeah.
online is for.
Yep, to notify the public.
There's a lot of people locally to us that are doing it as well.
If you look locally
Our
in
surrounding communities. are
surrounding
really-
communities, you have, Auburn, Bellingham,
Uxbridge.
Grafton,
Blackstone, Millville.
Mendon, Upton, Milford, Millbury, Uxbridge,
So many within the Blackstone Valley.
many within the valley. And for the sake of full transparency, with some districts, again, I've talked to some other supers, with some have posted both on the calendar, Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples' Day, and then sometimes that conversation has come up, and then where it ends up evolving to is, well, if we're gonna do it, we're just gonna do it. So.
Yeah, I feel like a slash is
Yeah.
weird.
So again, if people go and they look at some of the calendars, they may see both posted, so I know that has come up.
I think,
Any other further discussion?
I just think it's a shift that a lot of communities are making, and if we have an all means all mentality, that there's.
It's inclusive.
It's inclusive, and there's people within our community who this matters to them.
I do think there's people that this matters to for sure, and I totally appreciate that, and I personally am very neutral on it. I just think there might be some people who get the calendar next year where it says something different, and then you're gonna get phone calls because
that's
they're not
okay.
paying attention to this that came out for this meeting.
Correct.
But that might be an opportunity as well.
So
For
just
sure.
open to have a
Conversations.
conversation.
Absolutely.
If nobody else has any further discussion, be looking for a motion.
Well, I'll do it. I move to approve the change on the calendar from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples' Day.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by? Seconded by Beth. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining?
Abstained.
Sorry, 2 abstains, but it still carries. Thanks.
All right. And last on the agenda, no, for me at least, is the Student Opportunity Act, the SOA. So the SOA came about in 2019. It was a change in formulas that the Commonwealth started reimbursing schools at. And as part of the funding mechanism, it's a focus on providing funding to districts serving students with greatest needs. So it's looking at schools and students that have gaps, whether it's your EL population, SEL, or students with disabilities. And as part of the law, it requires that every district to set clear targets for improving disparities in achievement among student groups and to develop a 3-year plan to implement evidence-based strategies to meet their targets. Now, some districts in the Commonwealth got millions and millions of dollars for this. I think there was a local community got over $10 million added to their budget as a result of the change in structure. I think this is our 3rd year. The first 2 years, 2 of the years we had it, we did not see any increase in our funding.
We just received that minimum of $30 per student. Yeah.
1 year, we received an additional $30 per student for an increase of about.
Yeah, 2 years, that was a regular minimum.
Okay.
But then for FY '24, it's $60 per student. So it's a difference of $32,660, if I remember correctly.
So because the Commonwealth is giving you more money, they want to see what you're doing with the additional funding. And again, every single school district in the Commonwealth has to submit this. And again, here in Douglas, we saw an additional $30,000 over 3 years above the minimum. Some communities are seeing an extra $14, $15, $16 million a year.
What are they doing to get that extra money?
They have a different population.
Yeah, it's a different
I
population.
think a lot of gateway
Oh,
communities.
absolutely. Yes,
Think
yes,
gateway
yes.
communities.
Gotcha,
Yep.
gotcha, gotcha.
Right? So, as part of the plan that we submitted, summarizing the district's plan is part 1, really focusing in on 2 things. It's MTSS for all students, and it's looking at our inclusion model to drive the change with our special education population to close those gaps, because that's what it's targeted for. So in looking at MTSS, that addresses all students. It helps close gaps for all students. It also pairs nicely with our special education population. You've heard Dr. Rosenthal talk about our inclusion model and the changes we're looking to make in that. So that's where the focus for the SOA is going to be. Second part talks about analyzing our data for selected groups and what did we use for data. The third part just says, yes, we will implement target improvements for our lowest performing students. So we're looking at who our lowest performing students are. how we're going to continue to engage families and caregivers and stakeholders as part of the process. And then when you come to section 5, Desi asked you to pick 1 to 3 focus areas that met the needs of your district based off of your lowest performing students in your at-risk population. So I'm looking to focus in on 3. The first one is focus area 1.1, which is to promote students' physical, mental health, and wellness in welcoming, affirming, and safe spaces. So again, that's looking at SEL, that's part of MTSS. We were able to approve an additional school adjustment counselor, so that'll help address that focus area. The second focus area, and again, these are ones that came from DESE, implement a multi-tiered system of supports that helps all students progress both academically and in their social, emotional, and behavioral development. So again, further continuing to drive home MTSS in our schools. And then the third focus area, 2.2, using the MTSS process to implement academic supports and interventions that provide all students, particularly students with disabilities and multilingual learners, equitable access to deeper learning. And as part of the process, when I went to hit submit in full transparency before the April 1st deadline, there was a box that said school committee has voted on this with a date, so I had to ask for an extension, which brings us to today.
Yep.
Because if people read it, they see the deadline was April 1st. When I went to submit it last week, that box, I couldn't check off until
That
we
darn
met.
box.
So again, every school district has to do this. The Department of Education, picks about 6 or 7 different priority areas, and it's all stemmed around looking at your at-risk population and closing gaps.
Have you had any conversation, I know Dr. Rose, I know a lot of people aren't here now, but one of the things that I've heard from from teachers and families and kids and stuff like that is science and social studies are areas of which we still see kids that have those deficits, and they don't always have the supports. Those aren't always co-inclusion, co-taught teaching models. So when we're looking at next year and we're looking at our plans, do we have, based on the staffing, do we have the staffing to make sure that those inclusion classrooms and that co-taught model? And we might not have the answer to that right now.
Well, I can partially answer. That's probably a better question for Dr. Rosenthal. But if it's graded on a student's, so again, knowing the IEP process.
No, and I do, and I think, and it's more of a general, but I think.
So a lot of times what comes up is a student has, let's say, a processing disorder, or needs help in processing. That skill, that goal is worked on in academic support and then reinforced through their English class. And the hope is that student can take what they learned in academic support and ELA and transfer that in math, science, and social studies.
Right. My thought, though, is, and obviously, Dr. Rosenthal isn't here right now either, but those teachers are modifying curriculum and doing all those things regardless of what classroom they're in. So even though they're not gridded for supports, so say Beth Bergstrom is gridded for writing, I'm still doing writing in science and social studies. And if that class is taught by one person and they have, say, 8 kids on IEPs, I'm just thinking of all that, I think we just need to make sure we're considering all of that when we're looking at schedules next year, as well as looking at, from my experience as a parent, math class is always, the inclusion para was always a math class all year, and in English was a special ed teacher all year. There's not consistently rotation between the staff and different things like that.
I know that's one of the things that, in looking at the schedule, I know they're looking at that. Greg just finished meeting, was it today at the primary or yesterday at the primary? Okay, the days are running into each other, but I know he met, I think it was Friday at the middle school and today with the primary to look at staffing and the best way to do that for next year. The science and social studies conversation is probably a better conversation to have with Greg about.
I thought he would.
Yeah, but.
Do we have a block right now where kids could get writing support, whether it's the writing that they're doing in social studies and science, like a win in middle school is.
So as part of the intervention, so when we had our ESSA funds, we hired paraprofessionals at the middle, at the primary, elementary, and middle. The model at the elementary and primary was basically an extension of Title I. So Title I serviced, let's say, your 20 most at-risk kids. The new remediation para serviced the next 10. That was the model at the elementary. Here at the middle school, we have John Peliquin running our academic support center. I know I'm going to get the acronym wrong. And what that program does is, again, provide those Tier 2 supports for at-risk students. So it might be if a teacher's noticing academic difficulty in writing, the student could go there for 3-4 days and do what they need to do and then transition back to the classroom. If a student misses 4 or 5 days because of concussion or COVID or something, they might go there for half a day to get caught up and then go back in. So at the middle school, it's being done through that academic support center that John Peliquin runs.
So is there a system of automatically checking in on the students that have, like, IEP needs in writing? You know, like, is there a system in place where they're being checked in on? You know, like, if there's, like, I know Ms. Russo puts up all the homework and all the assignments are there. So if they've got writing assignments coming up, is there a support person?
So that's the responsibility of the liaison to make sure that teachers are modifying the curriculum inside the general education setting, and then working with those teachers and those students in academic support to make sure those needs are being met.
Okay.
So that's the responsibility.
So it's more than just those one-by-one cases that teachers are seeing, hey, this student is struggling with this. There is a system in place where students known to have difficulties in this area are also getting the support in that academic area. Is that what you're saying?
I just want to make sure we're talking apples to apples. So a student with an IEP.
Well, because in other districts, I have seen where there is a win block where kids who are having an isolated issue with getting an assignment completed.
That would be the academic support center that John Peliquin
But
runs.
kids who also have known difficulty in this area can go get that same support.
So Jonna has kids.
During the win block.
So Jonna has students who are there for 1 day, who are there for a week, who are there for a month, who are there for 3 years. So depending on the needs of the
But
student.
it's only that one person working with those students, is that?
It's a one, and again, it's probably 6, 7 kids
Mm-hmm.
at a time. So when I'm in there rotating, when I walk the halls, I poke in there to talk to Jonna or some, she has 6, 7, 8 kids in there. Sometimes it's 2 or 3, sometimes it's 6, 7, 8. We have a nice program here at the high school where our seniors do internships, so we have a couple seniors who come down and work with Jonna and the students on some extra help in remediation.
Like, WIN is now being looked at for the primary school, is that what
WIN
we
is being
talked
looked
about
at
today?
at the elementary school.
Elementary, so it's happening in primary now, but it's,
With primary, so we don't have a WIN block anywhere.
okay.
The elementary's exploring how they can try to fit in WIN.
Because that is a big thing that's happening in lots of districts. Everybody gets a win block. Every student gets a win block. Every student gets to work on what they need. If they are advanced readers, they read advanced textbooks with a teacher. If they are needing more support, they work with an individual who gives them the support that they need. It's happening in districts all around us.
Correct. The high school has an intervention block, and that's been in place for a while. And Rob's doing some stuff to modify that for next year, to increase that. The issue with implementing a WIN block is when you put those 20, 30 minutes in, you're pulling 6, 7 minutes from other blocks of time. So
Yeah.
the middle school right now has 48-minute long periods. You'd have to drop that down now to 43-minute long periods. So it's not just as easy as saying, let's implement it, because it's a conversation that needs to look, what does that look like now for the curriculum in English, math, science, social studies, world language, and your special areas? But then what happens during that WIN block, and where's the curriculum for the WIN block? Because you can look at it, if you look at the bell curve, your high-achieving kids are going to love, in theory, are going to love the extra support. Your struggling kids are going to crave that help. What are we doing for the middle? So it's one thing just to say, let's have it. It's another thing that there needs to be some thought put into what's the curriculum and what teachers are going to do. And I've seen lots of models where, sometimes right before MCAS, every kid gets ELA for a week. Then right before math, every kid gets math for a week. Then sometimes you rotate through and it's a day of math, a day of science, a day of social studies, day of English, day of world language. Then sometimes it's 2, 2, 2. Sometimes teachers are pulling, but you got to develop a good system, or else it just becomes chaos in a study hall.
Is that something that, if it's found to be successful in the elementary school, that would be potentially looked at for?
It would be looked at, but not, it'd be looked at, I'm a proponent of it, but it has to be done carefully and thoughtfully. And again, it would then have to be impact bargained with the DTA as to what it would look like, because it would be a change in their schedule.
Because I think it's where schools are going.
Yep. WIN's been around forever.
Yeah, and
So-
if we want to bring math MCAS scores up, maybe we do math win. Maybe
Yeah.
we need math win.
Yeah. So there's a 7-page document on the SOA that I had to submit. I do need a vote,
So I'd be looking for a motion.
just a motion to approve the Student Opportunity Act as presented.
I move to approve the Student Opportunity Act as presented.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
Meg?
Seconded by Meg. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm all set for this evening.
Okay, nothing from the school business and operations manager report. There's nothing here. Any topics not anticipated?
None tonight.
I move to adjourn the April 3rd.
We have executive session now.
Oh, I.
Yeah, we got to go into executive
so-
session
Oh,
first.
so somebody else can say it, I'm not going to.
I move to go into executive session at 8:30 PM to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation that may have if in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation, I'm glad I can talk, litigation position of the Douglas School Committee.
And we will not come back
And
into
we will
open,
not come back,
into open session. We will adjourn from executive session,
as said.
as motioned. Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
Beth?
Second by Beth. All those in favor?
You need a roll call vote.
A roll call vote.
Beth Bergstrom, aye.
Teresa Brooks, aye.
Meg Rotz,